What's going on, family? It's been a while since we talked, man. It's been what, a week? Hmm. Hope everyone's doing good. Hope everyone's well. I wanted to talk today about loving our enemies. A lot of times it's unnatural to us as not only Christians, but just people in general to love those who hurt us, love those who have set out against us, those who have did us wrong. And it's unnatural to want to do the Christian thing, to do the godly thing, and to forgive those who trespassed against us. But that's what Jesus calls us to do. So let's talk about it. First, I want to talk about how we can actually love others and get into the mindset and the mind frame of loving others. And then I want to talk about setting those boundaries. I think that's something that's not as talked about. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So the biggest question on the table is, how do we remember to love others? How can we consciously make an effort to love others in spite of what they do to us, in spite, specifically our enemies, specifically people who you don't like, specifically people that have done you wrong? How do we love those people? I want to turn to First John. Now, I'm not talking about regular John. The book of John is in the four Gospels. We're talking about First John. That's near the end of the book of the Bible. It's near the end, like near Revelation, right? I want to go to chapter 4. I want to start at verse 10. It says, "This is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his son as an atoning sacrifice for our sin." And then I want to read a few verses later, verse 19. It says, "We love because he first loved us." We need to remember, as Christians, as followers of Jesus Christ, that as much as we have been burdened, as much as we've been hurt, as much as we've been trespassed, did wrong by others, we have done that much more, and that to God. Like, when you really sit down and think about how great your sin is, and some people will go as far to say, man, my sin isn't that great. I'm not out here unaliving people. I'm not out here doing reckless things. But you don't understand, when you set your sin against a holy and righteous God, so a God that doesn't allow any sin in his presence, when you realize how much that sin, the little sin that you think is not really affecting God like that, when you really realize how much that sin affects him, you start to realize, man, I really have hurt God. I've really offended this holy and righteous God. And in spite of that, God still loved us. And so the whole point is, we need to understand that as much as we have sinned against God and he still loved us, we should show that much more love to those who have hurt us in the past, and to show forgiveness. In fact, it makes me think about a passage in Ephesians. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32 says, "Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other." Now, as much as we should forgive others and be the light in people's lives, that's what Jesus tells us in Matthew chapter 5. I think sometimes we struggle with forgiving those people that have hurt us, and we think that in love we should keep them in our lives. And so the question now becomes, how do we love others without compromising on our faith or allowing people to stay connected to us even when we don't need to? So let's expound into that. All right. Now, certain people will argue that if you have forgiven this person, if you have looked past their sin and you've forgiven for what they've done to you, then you're obligated to keep that person in your life, to keep relations with that person, because that's what love is, even if they're harmful to your walk with God. Let's go ahead and dispel that right now. I want to bring up a Bible verse. As you know, I always like to go to the Bible when it comes to these conversations. I want to go to 1 Corinthians. First Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33, and it says this: "Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character." And now I want to pair it to another passage in Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20 tells us, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." So if we have forgiven this person, if we've forgiven this person that has done us wrong, but they are a hindrance to our walk with God, we need to have enough wisdom to separate ourselves from them. No, you're not a bad person for creating distance from toxicity or ungodliness. I think about it like this, and I'm terrible with analogies, but please walk with me with this. If you're trying to lose weight, one way to do that is to simply cut out the unhealthy foods in your life, right? Cookies, cakes, um, excess sugar, and stuff like that. And you would go after healthier options like vegetables and fruit. So the idea is you're going to take away or remove yourself from these unhealthy things, because if you're trying to lose weight, those things are not valuable to you. Don't allow people in your life, or don't allow people to stay connected in your life that aren't godly influences, or they are hindering your walk with Christ. Now, you might have people in your life that are unbelievers. Perhaps they're coworkers, perhaps they're mutual friends in a friend group, etc., etc. I'm not advocating that you go out and start cutting off every person in your life that's not a believer, because God might be using you to be a light in their lives, and God might be using you to lead them to Christ. I'm specifically talking about people who may have hurt you. It's people you're not really connected to, people who have hurt you, who have done you wrong, you've forgiven them, and now you might feel this pressure or this feeling that, oh, I need to keep them in my life because that means that I love them, right? If I've forgiven them, then that means that I truly love them and I should keep them in my life. No, you're not pressured or obligated to keep people in your life just for the sake of being nice, or just because, oh, I've forgiven them. Forgive them and move on. Forgive them and let go. So, what are my final thoughts? We are called to love others. We're called to love our enemies. Jesus tells us so. And as humans, it's already hard enough to do that. You know, we always have this mentality of repaying evil for evil, or an eye for an eye, right? But Jesus calls us to do something different. He wants our hearts to be changed, and that means that we should love and forgive our enemies. And Jesus even goes as far to say we should pray for our enemies. Now, that's radical. That's challenging stuff. And I'm not saying it's easy to do. But with that being said, we aren't called to keep certain people in our lives just because we love them. Let them go. Cherish those that the Lord has put in your life. Cherish those people who are pushing you closer to Christ. Cherish the church, those people of God. Not just the physical building, but your brothers and sisters in Christ that are here to encourage you and build you up. That's the video. I'll catch you guys on the next one. And until then, tell somebody about Jesus. Love you guys.